Hi, I'm Mara Newberry. I cover Bonnie in the show and the ticket agent and Mahi.
Hi, I'm Sarah Jenkins, and I cover the showgirls and the ticket agent and Sapphire, who gets to play the harp with her breasts, the waitress, card girls, kind of all the above.
I'm Barry Busby. I cover Alex, Dave, the hotel manager, the Elvises, and the Tiffany's clerk. I'm a really visual person. I think everyone has their own thing, but I like to watch, and I mean, I'll write stuff down just so I have it if I need to look at something. But I typically like to watch the show over and over and learn that way on my feet. I don't really learn from writing.
Yeah, I feel like I kind of do both. I watch it enough that then I can get a broad picture of it, and then I'll start individually tracking people backstage, and then make tracking sheets for each person, which I learned through dance captaining and teaching the show to other people. So I found that the same kind of methods work with this. And then if I had to go on, I can just grab that sheet of paper and have one person's entire show on it as reference.
My rehearsal process for this was really interesting
different.
because I've worked with Dennis a lot. We have a really great relationship, and yes, choreographer extraordinaire. And so I helped teach a lot of the choreography because we did a lot of pre-production together where we met beforehand and then we had the stuff to teach. And then as soon as it kind of settles out and the show's ready, I mean, I just watched. And there's a lot of fittings during those processes, so you go in a lot for all these different tracks, which is interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting when you're learning it. Because you think once the show is open, you have plenty, you can start watching and learning stuff. But, I mean, it happens in rehearsals, too, and with no notice. So-and-so has a fitting in an hour, so you're going to be this track. And you go, oh, okay, well, I think we did that last night, and it may have changed, but why not? But yeah, the rehearsal, it's interesting because there's a lot of sitting and watching, because blocking changes so often, and sometimes there'll be entire days where it's just blocking and reblocking a scene, and then you go to stand up and realize that you've been sitting for 8 hours, and oh God.
And sometimes it's hard to keep straight, like which version is which version. I used to, in my notes, I would not only date them, so I'd say like, this is 8/22, and this is what we're doing, and I'd start taking notes or writing down charts and stuff, and then I started timing them, because I didn't know, I would go back the next day and be like, I don't know which that was, and we would change things, so I'd have like, this is at 10:44 a.m., and then later it would be this at 11:32 p.m., like changing the time, because I was like, I can't remember. You get so many versions in your head, especially when you're doing a new show, and they're trying out all sorts of different ideas, and let's try the scene this way, okay, now let's try this, now let's try this, and then let's go back to 2 versions ago, and you're like, oh, I don't remember which one that was. So taking the notes was a little bit helpful for us, because we're not the ones standing up and doing it a lot of the times. For me, it was, okay, I can go back, and 2 versions ago was at 5 p.m. Okay, so we're doing this version. And that sometimes I found was kind of helpful for rehearsals and remembering what we're doing. I love when Jack sings to his mom. It's probably one of my favorites. And I feel like it's beautifully designed. There's tiki mothers, and like the drops in it comes in, it's lighted beautifully, and I just feel like it's such an honest moment because there's so many like funny things in the show which are amazing, but to just, and it's ridiculous when you think about it because you see this lady dressed in absurdities and like somebody singing to it, but when it comes to that moment in the show, I just feel like it's so precious, and Rob is so fantastic at really honing in the audience. It's one of the few times I feel like the audience gets really quiet, because you're able to like enjoy and laugh and chuckle and talk to people because it's that kind of show, and that's one of the moments that just a hush kind of falls, and everybody's really zoomed in and like paying attention to what Rob is saying.
The land that our show lives in too is that this song, it's my favorite. I have one of my 2 favorite songs in the entire show, and it's the emotional pinnacle of this show. And then you step back and realize that the emotional pinnacle of the show is happening with somebody dressed in a giant tiki outfit. It's so ridiculous and funny, but it's so moving and it's beautiful. I love that song. My other favorite song is the finale, the title song. I think it's so great. And actually my favorite part is when they play the section of that song in the overture. Mara and I, every night, we're like dancing in the dressing room. I love it. I think it's my favorite. The overture is brilliant, but that section of the title song, the overture, is perfect.
I think my favorite is when we go into Vegas.
You love the
See
showgirls.
the showgirls and the palm trees grow.
Yeah.
That's my favorite, for sure.
This is my 4th time swinging. I was a swing on the first national tour of Shrek the Musical, and then I swung both the first national tour of Christmas Story and on Broadway.
This is my first time swinging. Yeah, it's an interesting experience. I've dance captained a lot, so I kind of knew what I was getting myself into, but officially it's my first time being a swing.
I'm kind of in the same boat. First time swinging, but I've dance captained and assisted a lot, so it's new territory. I mean, I kind of knew this before, but it's really taught, the perfectionist thing, it's really taught me to throw that out the window.
Yeah.
But it's also taught me how much I can multitask, because it's all about multitasking. Especially, for me, dance captain with swing is a huge, just being, multitasking and being completely organized. Like, it's taught, or it's improved that for me.
Yeah. I think it's just a way, just trust that you know what you're doing and that it's, going to be good enough. And trusting that you can do it instead of knowing that it's going to be good enough.
I think a funny thing, I've also learned that, because I'm a complete control freak in my life, I want to know exactly what's happening, I want to before it happens. And I get kind of a thrill out of, in rehearsals when we would go on, because people would have fittings or whatnot, we would go on and we'd get a little taste of it. And I remember having to do the opening and I was like, you don't really know what you're doing, but you do. And then like at the end you're like, oh yeah, that was fun. Like, it's not fun at the moment, but then afterwards it's like really fun, so it's kind of a thrill.
Yeah.
I think the hardest part, because like the dance stuff on stage is usually the easy part. I think the off-stage stuff, the tracking, like it's almost choreography backstage too, where you go to your quick changes, where you go to your wig fitting, or you put your wig on, where you go to everything. I think that's the hardest part.
And set stuff.
Yeah.
Like I know the choreography from rehearsal, but for me the scariest part would be jumping on and making sure I moved this set piece in the right place, because that's going to affect everything, so that stuff gets a little nerve-wracking.
And we just had an understudy rehearsal the other day, and we were talking about, especially for this show, they built out the stage over what is normally the work strip pit. So when we were on stage the other day, I was like, I didn't realize how far downstage so many things are, because when we watch from the audience, our perspective is just so different. So you lose a lot of the depth perception, and when you're on stage, you're like, oh, they didn't look like they were that close to the stage. But we don't get to practice in our costumes or our wigs, and all of a sudden you're in this huge piece, or you're dancing with a headdress, or you have chains and sunglasses on that you've never practiced with. And so all of a sudden, not only are you being thrown on stage and you've never experienced the lights and all the people, because when we rehearse, we don't have that many people, but you're all covered in stuff you've never danced in, with wigs and pieces, and you're like, oh. That's pretty tricky too.
I feel like the hardest part for me is knowing that you will never be perfect. And that's terrifying and hard for me, because I am a perfectionist. I want to do it right all the time, get it done, and having to let that go and just know that if you make it out and nobody has been killed, then it's a success.
You didn't fall into the trap.
Yeah, and so, I just kind of have to let it go.
I love Tony. He's a dream. I mean, I've spent a lot of time with him, one-on-one, teaching him his number and helping him with it and getting it polished. And he's so collaborative. He brings great ideas to the table. He's such a nice guy. I mean, first day of rehearsal, he knew everyone's names. Like,
he's literally the nicest.
The nicest man.
And so warm and says hi to everybody in the building. He starts this like cheer that we do just before the show goes up. He loves such a team player too.
He's like the mascot.
He really is.
He's like the Honeymoon in Vegas star / mascot.
Well, and you can tell every show he has this little ritual backstage and he dances and he's so excited to be on stage. And It's great. It shows.
And I'll be tracking backstage, and all of a sudden feel somebody come up and hug me from behind, and I'm like, oh, am I in the way? And it's, you know, Tony just joking around. None of us have
You haven't been on yet?
No, I mean, we just opened, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a relatively short run. Usually on something this short, unless something obviously terrible happens, which we hope that doesn't, that's not what, but that's fine. But normally in something this short, you won't have to do it. It's more, if this was a much longer running Broadway production, people might have personal days, you know, if they have, I'm going to my sister's wedding, and so a swing will have to go on for that weekend, or, you know, vacation weeks and stuff like that.
Yeah.
This is my second show at Papermill. I love Papermill.
I love it. This is my third show here.
It's only my
So
first.
it's kind of like coming back home. It's fun.
They treat you well here.
Yeah.
I love the courtyard. Like to sit out there in between shows and like on rehearsal days, it's nice to go have somewhere to like sit outside and like enjoy the view. Because you know, in New York, I mean, you could go to like Central Park, but it's kind of nice to just go like sit on a bench and hear a creek running. It's
And
really
it's
pretty.
nice to be close enough to the city where your friends can come.
Mm-hmm.
And you can sleep in your own bed.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Not in a hotel.